I've long read across many different genres. Um, I had never, when I first started pitching the book that was going to become Truth Be Told, when I started querying that, I believed that I had written like a women's fiction book club sort of book. And I got some feedback from an agent that she was like, the problem that I'm having here is that your genre is really muddy. I don't know whether this is like a lighthearted women's fiction book or like a darker mystery. And I think you really need to decide. And that was really good advice. It's advice that I give to my coaching clients today. But so I went back and I decided on mystery and revised that way. But then once I got my agent, I ended up revising it more towards mystery. And then once the book sold, for the editor, I revised it to more mystery. And so it was pretty fully suspense when it was published. And then when I went to write my second book, Follow Me, I was like, well, this is kind of what my audience is going to expect. So I need to lean into that. But then after Follow Me came out, I kind of took a break. I mean, Follow Me came out in February 2020. And so then there was the pandemic. I had one small kid, I had another one on the way. And so I didn't really have the headspace to be writing. And when I got back to it, I assumed I was going to write another thriller. And I started working on it, but for whatever reason, the idea that I had was just not sticking. It was not working at all. And I went on a writing retreat with a couple of my writer friends, and those women were all working on either rom-coms or later book club fiction, and they looked like they were having so much fun. They were like laughing and talking about the scenes that they were writing and the kissing that was taking place in their books. And I was struggling with this thriller that just was not working. And I was like, well, I want to do what they're doing. So I honestly didn't think I could do it. I honestly thought it was just going to be kind of like an exercise to break myself out of a rut. But once I started, I just couldn't stop. And I loved the book so much. Um, so I was really, really happy with the way that it turned out. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, I still love writing thrillers. But writing a rom-com was a lot of fun. I really don't know why I'm still so interested in influencers. You would have thought I got it out of my system. I didn't. With Vanessa, she's a yoga influencer. And so that's different than Audrey. Audrey was a lifestyle influencer. Vanessa is a yoga influencer. And the reason that I find yoga influencers in particular to be really interesting is because it just kind of seems like there's this obvious disconnect between traditional yoga principles and then this hyper consumerism, look at me ness of being an influencer. So I was really interested in that. I was also kind of interested in the idea of being the main character on the internet and what that means for your life. So that's kind of what happens to Vanessa. Vanessa is a yoga influencer who is kind of having this great life. She's living in New York with her very wealthy fiance. But then her fiance, who is this crypto bro, bankrupts his crypto exchange and flees the country under allegations of fraud and really just upends Vanessa's life in the process. So she has kind of become the main character on the internet through no fault of her own. And so she ends up moving back to Illinois, which is where she's from, moving in with her sister and trying to put together the pieces of her life. Vanessa is, like I said, she was living kind of like a flashy life in New York. She was engaged to this very wealthy guy. She had become sort of a celebrity influencer almost, in that, people were, she was like on the cover of like Yoga Journal. She kind of had become this personality. Meanwhile, her sister is pretty pragmatic. Faith is in law school in Chicago, just a much more grounded individual. So I wanted her to be somebody that Vanessa also kind of spirals. She has a tendency to spiral when she's upset. And so I needed her to have somebody that would ground her and kind of help her see reason and focus on what's real instead of getting all up in her head about what people are saying about her online. Sam is Vanessa's boyfriend from college. And not only is he her ex, but he is the ex that she never stopped loving. But she's pretty convinced that when they were in college, she ruined his life. And so when she meets him again in Chicago, there's still a lot of sparks flying between the two of them, but she's got all this baggage from her ex-fiance, and she's certain that she is going to ruin his life yet again. And so she tries to keep her distance. Tries being the operative word. I do love a an accidental meeting. That is how Sam and Vanessa reconnect in this book. They run into each other on the bus. And one of the reasons I think that's fun is just because they don't have time to prepare, you know? So like, and also if you're running into somebody and you're not intending to see anybody, you might not be looking your best, which is how Vanessa is when she runs into Sam. Um, but one of the ways that I I prepared to write this book. So, when you're writing a thriller, things just keep getting progressively more dangerous. And when you're writing a rom-com, there has to be the tension also has to be escalating, but it's like a romantic tension. And so one of the things that I did when I was working on this is I started writing down on just like a sheet of scrap paper a bunch of like little scenes, like things that I wanted, ways that I wanted them to connect. Like, for example, they run into each other on the bus. There's a little bit with a dress that she needs help with. Um, I wanted them to go to Friar Tuck, which is this bar that I used to go to in Chicago that has a karaoke night and a hat night. And I wanted them to go there. So I wrote all these little things down and then I plotted them out as to, okay, well, if they have this meeting here, then there needs to be, kind of a pulling away and then they get back here and sort of like that. When I write, most of my first drafts are just almost exclusively dialogue. Just that's just how I see the scenes. I can almost see them in my head. Interestingly, I cannot hear them. So when I was filling out a form for the publisher to do the audiobook and they were asking how the character sounded, I was like, that is a good question. I do not know how the characters sound. Um, as I write, I do kind of pick up on things that would be like vocal tics. Like, so like specifically, and both things are true, Sam says like, yeah, no, a lot. And so what I do in that case is I just kind of note it as I'm writing, and then I go back and I make sure that the characters not only sound consistent, but that nobody else sounds like them. Because at first, all of my characters sound like me. So just gotta work it out that way.